Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, August the 7th. And welcome to our commentary. We're going to start a feature on Sundays. I hope you like it. Um, every Sunday, we're going to look back at the articles that I wrote at the American Thinker. As many of you know, I have been posting about over at the American Thinker for since 1912, so about 10 years now. I've posted, my gosh, almost daily for that length of time. So I probably have hundreds of articles over at the American Thinker. In fact, if you go to one of my articles at the American Thinker and you click on my name, it'll take you to my inventory, and it's a long one of all the articles that I've posted over there. The articles that I post at the American Thinker are on the right hand side. They have two kinds of articles over there. They've got the really, really, really long articles on the left hand, and then they have what they call the blog, which is on the right hand side, and that's where I put my stuff over at the blog. Normally, my article is based on something in the news that day, a news story or an article, and then I develop that into my blog post. Pretty typical of what people do who have these kinds of blogs. So, American Thinker, I've been there since 2012, and I'm very grateful that everybody over there looks at my stuff and they agree to publish it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great honor for me to be associated with everybody over at that very popular conservative website. I mean, one of the most popular ones out there. If you follow, if you follow for conservative opinion. By the way, one of the benefits of posting over at the American Thinker is that I've reconnected with a lot of people because many of my high school buddies or college buddies, they see my name and they go, "Wait a minute, that must be that guy I knew in school." After all, not many people have a name like mine, and they contact me, and yes, that's how I've reconnected with many people who read my post because they see my name and they remember me from earlier times in my life. So, what we're going to do on Sundays, we're going to go back and review some of the posts that I have over at the American Thinker and talk a little bit about them. And then, obviously, you are always invited to check out the post if you missed them the first time around. I usually put them on my Facebook page when I post them every day. And of course, they're on my blog as well when I post them every day. But there's always a summary of them, as I say, over at the American Thinker. So let's go back to Monday of this week. And I wrote an article about what's happening in South Texas. You may remember that the House of Representatives voted to create a ban on assault weapons. And it was very close. It was like 217, 213, which in terms of the House, that's almost a tie. And lots of people switched parties, and several Democrats voted against having this ban. Now, an assault weapons ban is really just a gimmick. That's all that it is. It's just a gimmick. It doesn't solve any problem. It doesn't address any problem because most of the crimes in the United States are not committed by assault weapons because most assault weapons are not in the streets, and if they're in the streets, they're in the streets illegally. So the people who are using them or getting them are not buying them at a gun shop. So the assault weapons ban it's a real gimmick. That's all that it is. And what's interesting is, and that's what my post was about, is that two of the Democrats running for reelection in South Texas, Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar, two of the Democrats caught up in very tough reelection campaigns, they voted no, or they voted against the ban. And I think that's because they realize that most people see this as a gimmick, as a total gimmick, and it doesn't solve any problems. As I say before, the assault weapons ban doesn't solve any problem. We have a crime problem in this country, but it's not because of assault weapons. It's for other reasons, but it's not because of assault weapons, or banning them is just a gimmick. And I think the people in South Texas realize that, and that's why these two men up for reelection in very tough campaigns realize that it's better not to vote for that gimmick. On Tuesday, I wrote an article about the misery index. Now, those of you who remember the Carter years, you remember the misery index. It was created by Jimmy Carter as a candidate in 2016, what am I saying, 1976, when he first ran against President Ford. And the misery index was the sum of unemployment plus inflation, and you got something called the misery index. And Jimmy Carter used it against President Ford in 1976 to win that very, very close election. And then in 1980, the misery index was thrown right back at Jimmy Carter because the misery index, after 4 years of Jimmy Carter, was actually higher than it was when he first ran for president. So here we are, 2022, and once again, we're talking about the misery index, and that's what my article was about. The misery index is it's a political thing. It's not an economic thing, but it basically takes unemployment plus inflation, and you get something called the misery index, misery index, and that's what that was. So it was very effective for Jimmy Carter when he used it in 1976. It was not very effective for him because it was used against him in 1980 by President or then Ronald Reagan, who was running for president. And now, of course, I'm sure the Republicans are going to use it against the Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections. On Wednesday, we wrote about sugar and Cuba. Obviously, sugar and Cuba are two things that are synonymous. You know, always think of Cuba as a country that exports and well known for its sugar production. Well, apparently, unfortunately, that's not the case this year. Sugar production in Cuba has been down for years. And the reason it's down is because Cuba is a communist country where all of the means of production have been taken over by the state. And the state is highly inefficient in how it grows sugar and how it processes sugar and how it exports sugar. So the annual production or tons of sugar is way down to levels not seen in a very long time. Now, anybody familiar with socialism and communism should not be surprised to see that, because that's what happens in a communist country. You lose profitability, you lose efficiency, you lose productivity in a communist country. And the only way to turn it around is to privatize those sugar mills as they used to be, where they were very efficient and very productive when they were run by private people who understood the industry, not by politicians who do not understand the sugar industry. On Thursday, we wrote about Vin Scully. And I got to say something. I kept saying Vince in my video, and a viewer pointed out that I was saying Vince when in fact he was known as Vin. And you know, my viewer is exactly right. I made a correction on this later. His real name was Vince, of course, Vincent, but he went by Vin. I kept saying Vince. So my apologies. The viewer was correct in pointing that out to me. But it was Vin Scully, the great voice of the Dodgers, who passed away. And as I wrote in my post, the great thing about Vin Scully is that he did his job at his very best every single day for 67 years. He called the Dodger games for 67 years. You know, when you do something well and professionally for that length of time, I think you deserve to be remembered as he will be. So he'll go down in history as one of the great voices, not just in baseball, because he was also, I guess baseball was his primary sport. He also did other things in the off season as well, but it was baseball that was his primary profession. But he was just a great announcer, just had a great voice. So we remember Vin Scully on the article on Thursday. On Friday, we talked a little bit about The View and the fact that the television show The View has become unviewable. You know, you cannot watch that show anymore because it's nothing but a collection of women, you know, trying to get clicks and making outrageous statements. So I don't watch the show. Not many people do either. They only get an audience of about 2 million people, which is not that high of a figure for a television show. But it's basically a show where people say outrageous things and then they hope people talk about them in the internet. So as I said, I don't watch it, and a lot of people don't either. But The View is unviewable. That was my point in the post. On Saturday, I talked about CNN and the fact that CNN is apparently looking to brand itself a little bit better in China. Now, CNN, for those of you who live in the United States or who know anything about the television market in the United States, CNN is in a ratings collapse. I mean, they're averaging about 600,000 people an hour, which is horrible for a network in the United States. I mean, we live in a country of 330 million people, and they're averaging 600,000. I mean, compare that to Fox News. Fox News will average 2, 3, 4 million people an hour in their prime time, but CNN doesn't. Now, the reason that CNN collapsed is because it became obsessed with Trump. It became nothing but the anti-Trump network. It was Trump 24/7. It was everything was Trump and Trump and Trump and Trump. And now that Trump is gone, of course, they have nothing else to talk about. So people tune it out. They just say, what the heck? They have nothing to talk about. It's boring. And that's what's happening to CNN. Now they're trying to change their image. They're trying to somehow come up with a new format. I don't think that's going to work because what they have to do is come up with new faces. They have to basically clean out that network and just put faces on that screen who are not invested or somehow infected by Trump derangement syndrome. And once they do that, maybe they'll get back in the game. But for the time being, they're not getting very good ratings. And what my article was about CNN, that if they're going into China, well, they don't have to change their name. All they have to do is call themselves the China News Network, CNN, and they'll fit right in. They don't even have to change their logo, China News Network, if they want to get into China. And finally, today, Sunday, we have a post over at the American Thinker remembering the great movie of August 1964, and that was The Beatles' A Hard Day's Night. Now, as I wrote in my post, the movie didn't have much of a plot, but millions of people paid to see it. It was a television, a movie smash. The music, they sold millions of copies. So it was a huge success, the movie A Hard Day's Night. And when you watch the movie now, it's even more entertaining now than I think it was back then, because today you can hear the dialogue. You're older and you can hear the dialogue, and the fact is that the dialogue was extremely funny. And for example, when they were asking John Lennon, "How did you get to America?" and he says, "Well, when I got to Greenland, I made a left turn." That's the kind of stuff I don't think it was probably appreciated that much back then, but when you listen to it now, it's really really funny. Or when they asked Ringo, "Are you a rocker or a something else?" and he said, "No, no, no, I am a mocker." And again, this is the kind of humor that back then probably went right over the kids' heads who were watching this. But now, as an adult, you listen to it and you find it more and more entertaining. So, was it the greatest movie of the 20th century? No, of course not. Was it, did the Beatles win any trophies as movie stars? No, they didn't. But the movie itself was very entertaining. And a lot of people watched it. A lot of people had a lot of fun with it, including myself. And now, many years later, when I watch it, I laugh a little bit more because I hear the humor. And the humor is great. And of course, it was the writer, the guy who wrote the script, that Richard Lester, I think was his name. That's the guy who came up with all the lines and all the humor. And he was absolutely great. So there you have it, a little summary of my American Thinker post. As I say, they are available in my blog. I put them up on my Facebook page every morning. And if you want to see the whole list of them, just go to American Thinker and find me. And there's a whole list of them going back to 2012. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we'll see you Monday. Remember, on Mondays, we do the podcast with Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. And we got a lot to get into this week, lots and lots of issues from last week and the upcoming week. Thank you for watching. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later.